Okay, so we have finally hit the premiere of the highly anticipated HBO miniseries, The Outsider. This is episode 1, titled Fish in a Barrel. So we got a huge team here working on this show, big names. You got Richard Price, who is known from writing The Wire and writing episodes of The Night Of. He's the main writing force here for The Outsider. And you have Jason Bateman in the show itself and directing 2 episodes, and he is directing this episode here. And I gotta make note of the editor here, Leo Trombetta. He's edited episodes of True Detective and Narcos. You feel that vibe here in this episode. And really that stood out to most to me was the editing. And know that The Outsider obviously is based off a book by Stephen King. Disclaimer, when I saw the trailer for this show, I decided to read the book. I love the book. I will not be doing any book spoilers in any of my reviews, and please do not comment any book spoilers down below. Those comments will be immediately deleted. So jumping into this, I love how this episode opens. It has that classic Stephen King vibe, eerie classical music playing, and these establishing shots of Georgia, and really quickly you see Bateman makes a choice to make this as gloomy as possible, really fitting that type of Stephen King eerie vibe and also fitting that vibe he loves of Ozark, where it's shot in very dark tones with lots of hue on it. But what already stood out to me about the editing is how it perfectly puts everything together. Like just this opening sequence, you hear this music, then you quickly see our main character here, Detective Ralph Anderson. The master actor here, Ben Mendelsohn, the music was playing in his earbuds that we're hearing, and he takes them out, and when he slams the car door, it quickly shifts to suspenseful music. And it's going brilliantly back and forth between this man with his dog finding Frankie Peterson killed on that day to when Detective Ralph Anderson at night first sees the body. And I love they didn't shy away from showing visually that Frankie Peterson was mauled, and it's very gory, but it's so important we see how gruesome that is. And we get another character introduction here of Yoon Sablo, and he informs Detective Anderson that there was teeth impressions on this boy. And he's like, is it an animal? And he says no, and then we go to the opening credits, which was just a cool way to pump you up and get you hooked right into this environment and this story. So the challenge in this episode would be that you're translating from the book this way the story is weaving back and forth in different timelines of ending somewhere, but showing you how it got there at the same time. And they do such a good job of that, bringing that right up from the pages, getting everything you need to know into this episode, and that just shows the masterclass of editing too. Cutting between Anderson interviewing these witnesses and how it led up to these little hints we get of what he'll end up doing and arresting Terry Maitland in front of basically most of the town. So because you see these different timelines, I'm gonna kind of separate my review like that. So we'll start first with the witness interviews and going from Ralph's perspective in the earliest timeline, and then we'll jump to when we actually get to the arrest and go on from there. So an important character building moment is we see Ralph is actually laying on his bed, and you learn he lost his son Derek to cancer, and that Derek played for Terry Maitland, his baseball coach. But you see quickly that Ralph's wife is his voice of reason, and she's like, your son died of cancer, but Terry did not cause that. And this will come full circle to their scene together later on, which we'll get to. So one of the witnesses we see Terry talking to, besides the man who actually found the scene of the crime, was a teacher of Frankie Peterson's, and she saw him outside of this grocery store talking to Terry Maitland, who was driving this white van with the blood on it. And what the hardest challenge they were going to do in this show is that in the book, these witnesses are talking about a person they saw that they think was Terry Maitland, but in the show you have to visually see the face of this person. You can't keep that mystery away, and they just decide to show Terry Maitland's face, but they do such a good job of showing that but keeping a layer of suspense in it and not knowing who to even trust as a witness at the same time still. But that is her claim, that it was Terry Maitland, that this boy went in the car with him. And then the next witness we see Anderson talk to is a little girl who saw Terry walking up to this van all bloody in the face, and he says he got hit by a branch. And then we get another witness, and this is a bouncer from the strip club that saw him that night of the murder, and we learn from him that Terry parked his van out back and was asking for a cab, and he changed his clothes at this strip club. But the bouncer makes note that this guy had blood on the back of his jacket. So how is that just from a nosebleed? Then the next witness we see in this episode is the cab driver who picks him up, and she makes a big note of something was off with his eyes and that he wanted to get dropped off at the train. So when Ralph's watching all the footage of Terry at the strip club, what does he conclude from all this and what the witnesses said? He concludes that this guy, Terry, does everything idiotic after this murder, almost like he wants us to catch him. He's openly walking around bloody. He calls a cab even though there's a cab right outside of the strip club. And he even tells the cab driver to call her dispatcher, which is such odd behavior, so it's not normal. And what's interesting about this scene when Ralph is talking to Yoon Sablo about thoughts on this, that we learn this is the night before he's about to make his big decision and arrest Terry in front of everybody. So let's now go to that storyline and that day of Terry's arrest. So we see now the morning of Jason Bateman, aka Terry Maitland's got full goatee here, and this is the day his life will change forever. And you see he has kids of his own, a very happy family. And you see the day of, Detective Anderson is telling the two cops he's going to send out to arrest Terry in front of everyone to make it loud and clear what he's being arrested for. He wants this to be a scene. But what Ben Mendelsohn does in his acting so well, especially in this scene, is when he's telling these cops, there's such doubt in his face, and he portrays it so well. And then when the cops come in, they arrest him. Terry's shocked at what's happening. It's totally humiliating. It's in front of his whole family. It's in front of his whole team and people that love him. And you see when they take Terry to the Anderson's cop car, Terry recognizes Ralph Anderson. They know each other. And the wife, Lori, here is flipping out like, what's going on? And Terry's like, just call Howie, our lawyer. His wife, Lori, does just that right away. And it's the first time we see the lawyer, Howie Sullivan. Name change here. In the book, he's Howie Gold. They clearly changed the name because Howie Gold is the most stereotypical name you can give a lawyer. So that was a smart move by the writers here. And this is played by the man Bill Camp, which is awesome to see. He was great in Night Of, so he's another one part of that Richard Price team on that show. And he makes clear to the wife, do not let them take anything unless it says that they can take it on the warrant. So we see, though, continuing on in Terry in this cop car, he's saying to Detective Anderson, I wasn't even around on that Tuesday of the murder. But Anderson just says back to this, did you ever touch my kid? So this just shows you and highlights again why it's never good to have someone working on a case that has personal ties to the suspect. It blinds your rational judgment, and that clearly happens here with Ralph Anderson. And it's even worse because his kid died, and that's also blinding his vision. He wants justice for that. He's a broken man. Okay, so now this is where the episode kind of just goes straight forward in timeline. And we see Terry's now in this interrogation room. And we meet District Attorney Hayes. And he is a hawk. He's your classic type that has an agenda. He wants it to end the way he needs it to. And he really isn't caring about what's morally right and getting justice. He just knows what needs to happen in his mind. But we learn they found out that the blood type of the killer is AB positive, which is a very rare type of blood, 3% of the population. So they want to add that to the evidence they already have here. That if Terry has that, that's really going to make it look bad for him. But Terry, when they first start talking to him, he's just like, lawyer, lawyer. So when Howie gets there, he's freaking out. He's like, you arrested him in front of 100 people without giving him a chance first to explain himself. You could have just arrested him outside of the stadium after the game. But Ralph Anderson's justification for some of this behavior is that I had the two cops arrest him, not myself, because if I did, I would have beat him up and that would have given you guys ammo at trial. So all this is just shady practice, and that continues on when we see back at the Maitland home that when the cops come with a warrant, there's just vague description of what they can actually take, and it really just says anything that belongs to Terry, which you could argue is everything in the house. But what's important about this scene is you see there's this shady character just watching this going on with a hood. So this is where the Stephen King-esque vibes really start to kick in. So in this interrogation room scene, when everyone's in the room, we're learning why this case is so heavy and looking bad for Terry is because they found fingerprints of Terry's on the kid's body, on the van, and there was a slew of witnesses, which we've seen in the episode. But Terry drops the bomb here and says, I was in Cap City that day at a conference. So he's now pitching a full alibi. Now this little side thing, though, happening here, you see, presented really with not much dialogue at all, starts showing you the effects this has on Mrs. Peterson, the mother of Frankie Peterson, who was murdered. She's at the police station. She screams at Terry here when she sees him. This already showing you, too, how this is affecting Terry's image and what people think of him. And this Miss Peterson story basically is just shown that back at home that night, she's just losing it. She's swinging a baseball bat, and she has basically a broken heart attack here and collapses. And then we can assume she's dead because in the next little scene of the Peterson family, they're outside the hospital room, and the son and dad look like they get bad news from the doctor. So now we also see Terry in jail. And there's a prisoner who's got his eyes on Terry for killing a kid. I'm a little worried about this little mini plot they got going with that. It's used so much and overdone, but we'll see. And how necessary is it? So we actually get another intro of a character here in Alec Pelle. He is Howie's investigator. And this scene kind of sets up a race to the hotel for the footage of this conference. And Pelle actually, when he sees the footage, sees there's literal footage of Terry Maitland at this conference that day of where they say he was murdering this child. So he immediately sends that to Howie. And Howie shows Ralph and the DA this footage, and he literally says poof. So it's just like him saying, like, there goes your case. There goes your hard story here against Terry Maitland. So that really amps stuff up here. Bill Camp plays that perfectly. So now, going back to this Stephen King horror-esque feel, Miss Maitland checks on her 2 daughters at night, and her youngest, Jessa, is just looking at the window curtain. Very creepy. And then she just starts screaming. She's like, no, I will not tell him to get out of my room. He was here saying bad things to me. So you're just like, as an audience member, you're like, what is going on? What is she talking about? And it's so effective they build up that mystery here too, because you're getting a story where, okay, we're seeing the result of a man arrested and this mystery of did he really do it, but you're also getting like this whole side thing that feels very horror and thriller-like, and you're like, well, what does this have to do with what's going on there with Terry? Is it connected? So it's really interesting stuff, and they're kind of throwing a lot at you in the opening episode, but that's kind of also what's adding to this fast pace of it. That's why it's so important. The editing's so well done, because it's kind of giving you in a coherent matter that's not too confusing. So important scene here is when Howie and Mrs. Maitland go to see Terry in prison. Howie's saying what we have beats them in having this footage, but they have forensic evidence, and we need forensic evidence of our own. So Terry says he might have something for that. So they're not out of the water yet. Both sides have witnesses. They got footage of Terry, but they got the blood work and the fingerprints, so it's just kind of this war here, but it never really helps. But the one who's always really paying for it in these situations is the suspect, and that is Terry, no matter what you have on the good side. And that's where this story already starts to highlight the justice system and its flaws. So Ralph now goes to see the hotel footage himself that Terry was at and sees he went to the gift shop. And he learns that Terry touched a book that only he's touched in weeks, and it's super expensive. No one touches it. So Ralph buys it. Alec Pelle sees Ralph there, and he's like, if you find Maitland's prints there, you're doing us a favor. But Ralph's like, well, if we don't, it cancels the footage. So this sets up a really big scene to kind of get you to understand Anderson's mindset versus this DA. Anderson literally shows to the DA Hayes fingerprints at the crime scene, the fingerprints at the Sheraton Hotel, and the fingerprints of his booking sheet all match. And right away, Hayes says BS. He can't be in 2 places at once. And he's like, did you log these in evidence? So Hayes is just no good here. And at least you see Anderson's moral somewhat. And that he says, if Terry Maitland's innocent, we're not done. What if this kind of thing happens again? So he does choose wanting the right thing to happen over everything else, where really his blind spot is when it comes to personal connection to the case with his son and Terry being the coach. But he calls DA out, like, how badly do you want to win? And he's like, how badly do you want to lose? So there's no morals to Hayes. And he's definitely the least likable character so far in this show. So I really love the character focus on Anderson here, and this scene really stood out to me with him and his wife at the grave of his son on the day of his birthday. And he says there's times on the job he feels like his anger about what happened to his son and wanting justice covers his decisions, every judgment, and like Terry Maitland, he said. But again, we see the wife as the voice of reason in his life, and she's like, put all that noise aside, following your gut, tell me, did Terry kill that boy? And he's like, I can't tell, I really don't know. And Ben Mendelsohn, just a masterclass at acting, and he kills it here. I loved him in Bloodline, I loved him in Star Wars. I'm happy to see him as a lead in a show like this, carrying a character that's so important like this. And Ben Mendelsohn is in that category of me of just likable guys. Like, you love to see him on screen. He's a scene stealer. So it's great to see he's going to get the most screen time here, and especially for important moments like this that you have to pull off as an actor. And that will add so much more weight in the end in a story like this, to get these character moments, to make you feel all the emotions of your lead. So I'm happy they're making sure those scenes have importance, and they're really shot well by Jason Bateman here. So I love this really great music that starts playing here at the montage of everybody involved with this mess that's happening around this Terry Maitland case, with this little violin playing mixed with suspenseful music kicking up under it, and then like this kick drum. That's the stuff that just makes me love HBO. It's always quality over quantity for them, and you feel it here. There's just a certain tone they nail that other networks and streaming services just can't. So this prisoner across the way says to Terry, tomorrow morning when you get back from court, I will be waiting for you. So boom, that's how the episode ends. And it clears up too when the wife was putting his suit out that he's going to court already, and that should be some really interesting stuff going on there. So for a premiere episode, this was a masterclass in editing to me. The music stood out. It was really good to set the tone, and it's just exciting to see Jason Bateman directing here and seeing him in the show itself, and Ben Mendelsohn as a lead, just killing it, and a great book being put to screen in a great way. So for me, I'm giving this premiere a 9.1. Let me know what you thought of it down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and theories. Again, no book spoilers in the comments, please. And make sure to check out my review of episode 2, which is also up. And please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss one of my reviews of The Outsider. I'll be covering every episode this season. I'm also doing Servant right now, and I'll be doing Better Call Saul, so you don't want to miss any of those. And please follow me at Steve Varley1 on Twitter and Instagram for more of me, and I'll see you next time.